Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
Standing at my own bedroom window, I watched my sister Jessica point directly at me while talking to her fiancé's wealthy parents below on the terrace. Her voice carried clearly through the evening air as she gestured dismissively in my direction. "Oh, that's just Harold, our gardener. He's worked here for years, really good with the grounds, but, simple folk." The crystal wine glasses in their hands contained my 1892 Bordeaux bottles, worth $5,000 each from my private vintage collection. Jessica had thrown an $87,000 engagement party on my vineyard estate without asking, opened my locked cellar, and now introduced me as hired help to impress people with wealth I had built through 10 years of backbreaking sacrifice. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound, because Jessica knew exactly who I was and what this place meant. 10 years ago, when I was 22 and she was 16, our parents died in a horrific car accident during a winter storm on Highway 41. Dad had been driving home from his second job at the hardware store, Mom beside him after finishing her evening shift at the diner. Black ice sent their old Ford pickup spinning into oncoming traffic, killing them both instantly. I inherited a failing 20-acre farm, drowning in debt with Jessica as my legal responsibility. The bank wanted to foreclose immediately, but I fought for every extra day. While other guys my age were partying through college, I worked 3 jobs simultaneously. Mornings found me loading trucks at the grain elevator, afternoons renovating houses with a local contractor, evenings studying viticulture through online courses and agricultural extension programs. Jessica attended high school while I sacrificed everything for her future. I paid for her college applications, bought her prom dress, attended every graduation ceremony our parents couldn't. When she wanted to study marketing at the state university, I took out additional loans and worked weekends at a restaurant to cover her tuition. During her 4 years of sorority parties and spring break trips, I was transforming our inherited wasteland into something extraordinary. The soil analysis revealed perfect conditions for growing wine grapes, something Dad never realized because he was too busy working multiple jobs to survive. I planted my first vines with borrowed money and sheer determination, learning from agricultural experts and viticulture professors who took pity on a young man trying to honor his family legacy. 7-hour sleep became luxury as I balanced construction work with tending fragile grapevines. Year after year, I expanded the operation. The first harvest produced barely enough wine to fill 50 bottles, which I sold at the local farmers market for $20 each. People loved the quality, and word spread throughout the county about the exceptional wine from the Johnson family vineyard. I reinvested every penny back into the business, buying better equipment, improving soil conditions, expanding the growing area. By Jessica's college graduation, I had built the vineyard into a legitimate operation, producing award-winning wines that sold in upscale restaurants across 3 states. Food and Wine magazine featured our Cabernet Sauvignon in their annual review, calling it a remarkable achievement from an unlikely source. The success allowed me to construct a beautiful tasting room, upgrade the farmhouse into a proper mansion, and create the kind of estate that attracted wealthy visitors from major cities. Jessica returned home after graduation to a completely transformed property worth over $2 million. The struggling farm of her teenage years had become a luxury vineyard estate with rolling hills of perfectly maintained grapevines, a magnificent stone mansion with 7 bedrooms, and a wine cellar stocked with vintages that collectors sought eagerly. She started working at a marketing firm in the nearby city, earning decent money while living rent-free in the guest wing of the mansion I had built. Jessica seemed grateful for my sacrifices, often bringing friends to visit and proudly showing them around the estate. She would tell people how her big brother had saved their family legacy, turning tragedy into triumph through incredible determination. When Jessica announced her engagement to Bradley Ashworth 6 months ago, I felt genuine happiness for her. Bradley came from a prominent political family with connections throughout the state. His father, Senator William Ashworth, had served in Congress for 15 years, while his mother, Patricia, chaired several charitable organizations. They seemed like good people who would welcome Jessica into their sophisticated social circle. Jessica asked if she could hold her engagement party at the vineyard, describing it as a small gathering to introduce both families. She painted a picture of maybe 20 or 30 people enjoying wine and appetizers on the terrace, nothing elaborate or expensive. Given everything we had been through together, refusing never crossed my mind. This was my sister, the girl I had raised and protected, asking to celebrate the happiest moment of her life at the home I had built for our family. But watching her tonight through my bedroom window, something felt terribly wrong. The terrace below hosted at least 150 guests, not the intimate gathering she had described. Elegant round tables covered in white linen filled the entire outdoor area, each centerpiece featuring arrangements of roses and orchids that must have cost hundreds of dollars. A professional catering staff served hors d'oeuvres from silver platters, while a bartender poured drinks from a full bar setup. The climactic twist that shattered my remaining trust came when I overheard Jessica talking to Bradley's college roommate near the fountain. She was explaining how the estate had belonged to their family for generations, describing a legacy of old money and inherited wealth that bore no resemblance to reality. According to Jessica's version, she was the heir to a winemaking dynasty dating back to the 1800s, with ancestors who had built this empire through generations of careful cultivation and business acumen. Everything she said erased my existence from the story. There was no mention of our parents' deaths, my years of sacrifice, or the blood and sweat that had transformed this place from bankruptcy to success. Jessica had rewritten history to present herself as born into privilege, inheriting wealth rather than earning it through family tragedy and determination. The depth of Jessica's deception became clearer as I walked through my own property like a ghost. Near the wine cellar entrance, I discovered she had hired 3 professional gardeners for the evening, all wearing matching green polo shirts with Johnson Vineyard Grounds Crew embroidered on the chest. She had instructed them to address me as boss, whenever guests were listening, maintaining the illusion that I was the head groundskeeper rather than the actual owner. One of the hired gardeners, a middle-aged man named Frank, pulled me aside near the tool shed with genuine concern in his voice. "Sir, your sister told us you sometimes get confused about your role here, that we should play along if you act like you own the place. She said it keeps you calm and functional. Is that true?" The kindness in his question made Jessica's manipulation even more painful to endure. I assured Frank that everything was fine while my mind reeled from the implications. Jessica had prepared for this evening by creating a narrative that painted me as mentally unstable, prone to delusions of grandeur about owning property that belonged to others. She had established a foundation for dismissing anything I might say that contradicted her false version of events. Moving through the crowd of guests, I encountered Bradley's mother, Patricia Ashworth, admiring the wine collection in the tasting room. She was examining bottles of my award-winning Pinot Noir while speaking to another woman about Jessica's remarkable family heritage. According to Patricia, Jessica had described ancestors who had immigrated from France, with centuries of winemaking knowledge, establishing this vineyard as one of the oldest continuous operations in the region. The conversation continued with Patricia praising Jessica's humility about growing up with such wealth and tradition. "She never flaunts her advantages," Patricia explained to her companion. "Bradley says she's remarkably down to earth for someone from such an established family. It speaks well of her character that she doesn't act entitled despite inheriting all this." When Patricia noticed me listening nearby, Jessica quickly appeared to perform another round of introductions. "Patricia, I'd like you to meet Harold, our head groundskeeper. He's been taking care of the vineyard for years, really knows every inch of the property." Jessica's voice carried just the right mixture of warmth and condescension, treating me like a valued but simple employee who deserved acknowledgement for faithful service. Patricia smiled kindly while extending her hand for a brief, polite handshake. "It's wonderful to meet you, Harold. Jessica has told us how dedicated you are to maintaining these beautiful grounds. The gardens are absolutely spectacular." She spoke slowly and clearly, the way people address someone they assume has limited understanding. Jessica continued the performance by asking if I had finished preparing the back gardens for tomorrow's cleanup. She suggested that I should probably head to my quarters soon, since the evening would run late, and I would need to be up early for maintenance work. The dismissal was gentle but unmistakable, positioning me as hired help who shouldn't linger among the sophisticated guests. Bradley's father, Senator William Ashworth, joined our conversation with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to commanding attention. He was a tall, silver-haired man in his 60s, wearing an expensive navy suit, and speaking with the practiced charm of a career politician. After Jessica repeated her introduction of me as the groundskeeper, Senator Ashworth launched into a discussion about landscaping challenges at his own estate. "Harold, I've been struggling with soil drainage issues on my property in the capital. My current landscaping crew seems overwhelmed by the scope of the project. Would you be interested in consulting work? I'd pay well for expertise like yours." He handed me his business card with a magnanimous smile, genuinely believing he was offering a wonderful opportunity to a hard-working groundskeeper. The irony was staggering. Senator Ashworth was treating me like hired help while drinking wine from my personal collection, standing in the mansion I had built, surrounded by gardens I had designed and planted. He had no idea that he was offering employment to someone whose agricultural operation was worth more than his political salary would earn in a decade. Jessica beamed with apparent pride at the exchange, playing the role of a caring employer who takes personal interest in her staff's career advancement. "That's so generous of you, Senator Ashworth. Harold would love the opportunity, wouldn't you?" She looked at me expectantly, clearly expecting gratitude for the condescending offer. The most devastating moment came when I overheard Jessica talking privately with the wedding planner she had hired for the engagement party. They were standing near the entrance to my private study discussing cleanup arrangements and future event possibilities. Jessica was explaining that Harold can handle most of the maintenance work afterward. He needs the money and takes pride in keeping everything perfect. According to Jessica's instructions, I would be responsible for cleaning up after her $87,000 party, removing all traces of the elegant celebration from my own property. She was essentially volunteering my labor for free while portraying it as charitable employment for someone who couldn't find better opportunities. The wedding planner took notes about coordinating with me for removing tables, disposing of floral arrangements, and restoring the grounds to normal condition. The climactic twist of this section arrived when I discovered that several guests had parked their luxury vehicles directly in my personal driveway, blocking access to my own garage. Mercedes sedans, BMW sports cars, and a Porsche SUV occupied the space where I normally parked, with guests assuming that the groundskeeper would use some other entrance or parking area. But the crushing realization came when I recognized one of the servers from the catering company. Maria Rodriguez had worked several events at my vineyard over the past 2 years, serving wine during private tastings and corporate retreats. She knew me as the owner and had always been respectful and professional during our business interactions. Tonight, Maria avoided eye contact and treated me like a stranger when I approached her near the bar. When I quietly asked if she was enjoying working the event, she responded with the polite but distant tone reserved for unfamiliar service staff. "The party is lovely, thank you. I hope you're able to get some rest after your shift." Maria had clearly been instructed to pretend she didn't know me, another layer of Jessica's elaborate deception. The emotional devastation was complete. My own sister had systematically erased my identity-stolen credit for my achievements and convinced an entire gathering of sophisticated people that I was nothing more than hired help. She had turned my greatest pride into a source of humiliation, transforming the estate I had built through sacrifice and determination into a stage for her elaborate lies. The true scope of Jessica's betrayal revealed itself when I retreated to my study for a moment of privacy and discovered her purse on my desk. She had left it there while giving Bradley's family a tour of the mansion, apparently confident that Harold the groundskeeper wouldn't dare enter the owner's private study. The purse sat open, legal documents clearly visible inside the leather handbag. Curiosity and growing suspicion compelled me to examine the papers more closely. What I found destroyed any remaining hope that tonight's humiliation was simply misguided social climbing or temporary embarrassment about our humble background. Jessica had brought a complete legal strategy to steal my entire estate, documented in official forms and attorney letterhead. The first document was a quitclaim deed transferring full ownership of the vineyard from me to Bradley Ashworth, dated for execution immediately after their wedding next month. My signature appeared at the bottom of the form, except I had never seen this document before in my life. Jessica had forged my name with remarkable skill, practicing my handwriting, until she could reproduce it convincingly. Attached to the forged deed was a medical evaluation claiming I suffered from developmental disabilities that impaired my decision-making capacity. According to the fake psychiatric report, I had been living in a fantasy where I believed myself to be the vineyard owner, when in reality I was a groundskeeper suffering from delusions of grandeur and mild intellectual impairment. The report recommended supervised living arrangements and legal guardianship to protect me from making harmful financial decisions. Dr. Margaret Stevenson, a licensed psychiatrist in the state capital, had allegedly conducted extensive evaluations documenting my mental incompetence. The report described my tendency to become agitated when my ownership delusions were challenged, my inability to understand complex business concepts, and my need for structured employment to maintain emotional stability. Every detail was crafted to support the narrative that I required legal protection from my own confused thinking. But Dr. Stevenson's signature was another forgery. I had met her once at a medical conference where I spoke about agricultural therapy programs for veterans, and she had praised my presentation on the psychological benefits of vineyard work. She would never have written such a report about me. And Jessica clearly knew this when she fabricated the entire evaluation. The conspiracy extended far beyond forged documents. Jessica had been secretly recording our conversations for months, editing them to create evidence of my alleged mental instability. Audio files stored on a small recording device showed my voice expressing confusion about business operations, asking for help with basic decisions, and acknowledging my limitations as a simple groundskeeper. The recordings were skillfully edited masterpieces of deception. Jessica had spliced together fragments of normal conversations, removing context and rearranging my words to create entirely false meanings. A casual comment about needing help with tax preparations became evidence that I couldn't understand financial concepts. My joke about feeling confused after a long day became proof of cognitive impairment. Even more devastating was discovering that Jessica had contacted several of our mutual friends and family acquaintances, warning them about my declining mental health. According to her version of events, I had been exhibiting increasingly erratic behavior, making wild claims about owning the vineyard, and becoming hostile when people tried to redirect my thinking toward reality. Our childhood friend Sarah Martinez had received a tearful phone call from Jessica 3 months ago describing how worried she was about my psychological deterioration. Jessica explained that I had always been a little slow, but that recent stress had triggered serious delusions. She asked Sarah to avoid contradicting me directly, but to be prepared for strange claims about owning property and businesses that belonged to other people. The attorney handling this legal fraud was Marcus Wellington, a partner at one of the state's most prestigious law firms. According to the correspondence in Jessica's purse, Marcus had been working on this case for 4 months, preparing the paperwork necessary to have me declared incompetent and committed to a supervised living facility immediately after Jessica's wedding. Marcus's strategy memo outlined the entire timeline. Following the wedding ceremony, Jessica would petition the court for emergency guardianship based on my deteriorating mental condition. The forged medical records and edited audio recordings would provide evidence of my incompetence, while witness statements from friends who had been misled about my condition would corroborate Jessica's claims. Once the court granted temporary guardianship, Jessica could authorize my placement in a residential facility specializing in adults with developmental disabilities. The quitclaim deed would transfer property ownership to Bradley, supposedly to protect the estate from my poor decision-making. Jessica would receive power of attorney over my financial affairs, giving her complete control over the vineyard's substantial assets. The most chilling aspect of the plan was its attention to potential objections. Marcus had researched my business relationships, identifying people who might question the guardianship petition. He had prepared responses to likely challenges, including arguments that my previous business success was actually the result of lucky timing and assistance from others who deserved the real credit. According to the legal strategy, any protest from my employees, business partners, or agricultural contacts could be dismissed as evidence of how effectively I had manipulated people into believing my ownership delusions. Marcus argued that my ability to convince others of my false identity actually demonstrated the severity of my mental illness and the urgent need for professional intervention. The timeline was frighteningly specific. The wedding was scheduled for the third Saturday of next month, followed by a 2-week honeymoon in Europe. During that time, Jessica would file the guardianship petition, present her fabricated evidence, and obtain court orders for my commitment. By the time the newlyweds returned from their honeymoon, I would be confined to a facility, while Jessica and Bradley enjoyed full ownership of the estate I had built. But the climactic twist that revealed the ultimate cynicism of this betrayal came in a separate set of documents showing Bradley's family financial situation. Senator William Ashworth was deeply in debt, having borrowed heavily against his political career to maintain the appearance of wealth befitting his social position. His campaign funds were depleted, his personal assets were mortgaged beyond their value, and creditors were demanding immediate payment on overdue loans. The Ashworth family needed Jessica's supposed inheritance desperately to avoid bankruptcy and public financial humiliation. Bradley's engagement to Jessica was essentially a business transaction designed to access what they believed was generational wine industry wealth. They had no idea that Jessica possessed nothing except the lies she had constructed about inheriting family fortune. Jessica was using me to deceive Bradley's family, while Bradley's family was using Jessica to access non-existent inherited wealth. The entire engagement was built on mutual deception, with my actual estate serving as the prize that neither party had any legitimate claim to possess. Jessica planned to steal my life's work to maintain a lie that would ultimately benefit people who were themselves living lies about their financial stability. The emotional devastation was complete. My sister, the girl I had raised and protected after our parents' death, had spent months planning to destroy my life for money and social status. She was prepared to have me imprisoned in a mental health facility, while she and her fraudulent fiancé enjoyed the wealth I had created through 10 years of sacrifice and determination. Retreating to the master bathroom, I locked the door and immediately called my attorney, Trevor Mason, at his home number. Trevor had handled all my business legal matters for 5 years, from property acquisitions to contract negotiations with distributors. He was a sharp, experienced lawyer who specialized in agricultural business law and had become a trusted friend through our professional relationship. Trevor, it's Hagrid. I need emergency legal advice about something happening right now at my property. Can you talk privately? My voice remained calm despite the turmoil. Years of crisis management during the vineyard's development having taught me to think clearly under pressure. Trevor sensed the urgency immediately. Of course, Hagrid. I'm in my study. What's going on? I explained the entire situation in detail, describing Jessica's forged documents, the fake medical records, and the conspiracy to have me declared incompetent. Trevor listened without interruption, occasionally asking clarifying questions about specific legal documents and timelines. "This is serious felony-level fraud," Trevor confirmed after hearing all the details. "Document forgery, identity theft conspiracy to commit financial crimes, and potentially kidnapping if they succeed in having you committed under false pretenses. I've handled similar cases where family members tried to steal estates through fraudulent guardianship proceedings." Trevor's expertise proved invaluable as he outlined the legal vulnerabilities in Jessica's plan. The medical records are the weakest point because Dr. Stevenson will immediately deny writing any such report when contacted by authorities. The forged signatures can be proven through handwriting analysis, and the edited audio recordings will show evidence of digital manipulation under forensic examination. But Trevor warned that defending against such accusations could still be challenging. Even obviously false claims can cause temporary legal problems if presented convincingly in court. We need overwhelming evidence to expose this conspiracy before Jessica files her petition, because fighting fraudulent guardianship proceedings after they're initiated can take months and cost enormous legal expenses. "What do I need to do right now?" I asked, eager to begin building our defensive strategy. "Document everything happening tonight," Trevor instructed. "Photograph those legal papers, record conversations where Jessica admits to her deception, gather witness statements from people who know the truth about your ownership and mental competence. We want evidence that shows premeditation and conscious fraud, not just mistakes or misunderstandings." Trevor explained that exposing Jessica's lies publicly, with credible witnesses present, would make it nearly impossible for her to proceed with the legal conspiracy. If her fraud becomes known to people like Senator Ashworth before she files court papers, her entire plan collapses. Politicians can't afford association with obvious criminal activity. I spent the next 30 minutes gathering and photographing all the evidence in Jessica's purse, being careful not to disturb the original arrangement of documents. My phone camera captured every page of the forged deed, the fake medical records, the attorney correspondence, and the edited audio recordings. I also took photos of the recording device Jessica had been using to capture our conversations. While documenting the legal papers, I discovered additional evidence of Jessica's long-term planning. Her personal notebook contained detailed observations about my daily routines, business meetings, and conversations with employees. She had been studying my behavior for months, looking for quotes and actions that could be misrepresented as evidence of mental incompetence. The notebook revealed that Jessica had consulted with Dr. Harrison Pierce, a corrupt psychiatrist who had lost his license in another state for participating in fraudulent disability claims. Dr. Pierce had coached Jessica on creating believable medical records and editing audio recordings to support claims of developmental disability. He was being paid $5,000 for his consultation on making the fraud legally convincing. Jessica's notes also showed that she had been researching residential facilities for adults with developmental disabilities, specifically looking for institutions that accepted court-ordered commitments and had minimal family visitation policies. She wanted to find a place where I could be confined indefinitely with limited opportunity to contact people who might question her version of events. But the most revealing discovery was a timeline showing how long Jessica had been planning this betrayal. Her earliest notes dated back 8 months, shortly after she had started dating Bradley seriously. She had researched his family's financial situation, confirmed their need for money, and developed a strategy for using my estate to solve both their problems and her own social ambitions. The notebook contained practice sessions, where Jessica had rehearsed her performance for tonight's engagement party. She had written scripts for different scenarios, planning exactly how to introduce me as the groundskeeper, what stories to tell about our family history, and how to handle questions that might expose her lies. every detail of her deception had been carefully calculated. Jessica had also been cultivating relationships with people who could serve as witnesses to support her guardianship petition. She had contacted former teachers, distant relatives, and community members, gradually spreading the narrative that I was experiencing mental decline. Her approach was subtle but systematic, creating a network of people who would believe her claims about my incompetence. The most chilling discovery was a backup plan in case the guardianship strategy failed. Jessica had researched my business insurance policies, learning that the vineyard carried substantial life insurance on me as the owner and primary operator. If legal fraud didn't succeed in transferring the estate, Jessica was prepared to consider more permanent solutions to her financial problems. While examining Jessica's conspiracy, I realized that my mother's old jewelry box in the study contained documents Jessica had never seen. Mom had saved letters and photos documenting my transformation of the failing farm into a successful vineyard, including correspondence with agricultural experts' loan applications, showing my personal financial responsibility, and newspaper articles about the vineyard's awards and recognition. These documents provided overwhelming proof that I was the true owner and developer of the estate, with a clear timeline showing my work and investment over 10 years of development. My mother had been proud of my achievements and had carefully preserved evidence of the vineyard's growth from struggling farm to award-winning operation. The climactic twist came when I realized that Senator Ashworth's own financial desperation made him vulnerable to exposure. If I could prove that Bradley's family was bankrupt and counting on Jessica's non-existent inheritance to solve their problems, their motivation for participating in the fraud would become obvious to everyone at the party. Trevor confirmed this strategy when I called him back with additional details. Politicians are terrified of financial scandals because they destroy careers instantly. If you can expose the senator's debt problems while revealing Jessica's lies, he'll distance himself from both of them immediately to protect his reputation. I spent the remaining time before my public confrontation setting up discreet recording equipment throughout the mansion. My security system included hidden cameras that could document the entire evening's events, providing video evidence of Jessica's statements and the guests' reactions to her lies. The stage was set for complete exposure of Jessica's betrayal, with legal evidence, witness testimony, and recording technology ready to document the truth about our family history and the real ownership of the estate. I changed from my work clothes into my finest tailored suit, the charcoal gray ensemble I wore, to wine industry conferences and awards ceremonies. The transformation was deliberate and symbolic, shedding the humble groundskeeper image Jessica had imposed on me and reclaiming my identity as the successful vineyard owner I had worked 10 years to become. Descending the main staircase into the crowded reception area, I walked with the confidence of someone completely comfortable in his own home. Several guests noticed my arrival, whispering among themselves about the well-dressed man who had appeared from the family quarters of the mansion. Jessica spotted me immediately, her face showing momentary confusion, before settling into practiced social composure. I approached the central gathering near the wine bar, where Bradley was leading a toast to celebrate his engagement to Jessica. Crystal glasses filled with my most expensive vintage reflected the elegant lighting as guests prepared to honor the happy couple with words of congratulation and wishes for future happiness. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced in a clear, carrying voice that commanded immediate attention from everyone present. "Before we continue this beautiful celebration, I'd like to thank you all for attending this engagement party here at my vineyard estate." The emphasis on the word "my" was unmistakable, creating a moment of confused silence among the sophisticated guests. Jessica's face went pale as she realized what was happening, but she quickly attempted to maintain her fictional narrative. "Harold, you seem confused again. Remember we talked about this. You work here, but you don't own the property." Her voice carried the patient, condescending tone of someone addressing a mental health patient Experiencing Delusions. Actually, Jessica, I think it's time everyone learned the truth about who owns this estate and how it came to be built. I reached into my jacket pocket and withdrew my business cards, the elegant cream-colored stock that read, Hagrid Johnson, owner and proprietor, Johnson Family Vineyard. I handed them to several nearby guests, including Senator and Mrs. Ashworth. My name is Hagrid Johnson, and 10 years ago, I inherited a failing 20-acre farm when my parents died in a car accident. My sister Jessica was 16 at the time, and I became her legal guardian while working 3 jobs to keep the property out of foreclosure. Every vine you see outside, every bottle in this wine cellar, every inch of this mansion was built through my labor and sacrifice. The guests examined my business cards with growing confusion, comparing the information to Jessica's claims about inherited family wealth and generations of winemaking tradition. Senator Ashworth frowned as he read the card, beginning to understand that something was seriously wrong with the story his family had been told. Jessica attempted to interrupt with increasing desperation. Please don't listen to him. Harold has been having these episodes where he believes he owns the property. The family has been very patient with his condition, but sometimes he gets confused and makes these claims. She turned to Bradley for support, hoping his confirmation would maintain credibility with his parents. But I had prepared for this moment with overwhelming evidence. From my other jacket pocket, I produced copies of the original property deed, showing my inheritance of the farm business licenses for the vineyard operation, in my name agricultural awards, and recognition letters addressed to me personally, and bank statements showing my investment in property improvements over the past decade. These documents tell the real story, I explained to the fascinated audience. Here's the death certificate for my parents, Robert and Margaret Johnson. Here's the inheritance paperwork showing I inherited the farm at age 22. Here are the business licenses I obtained to convert the failing farm into a legal winemaking operation. I spread the documents on a nearby table, inviting guests to examine them closely. Here are awards from the State Agricultural Department recognizing our wine quality. Here's a feature article from Wine Enthusiast magazine about my personal journey from struggling farmer to successful vintner. And here are bank records showing my investments in vineyard equipment, mansion construction, and property improvements. The evidence was overwhelming and impossible to dispute. Guests murmured among themselves as they examined official documents with government seals, business certifications with my signature, and published articles featuring my photograph alongside descriptions of my work building the vineyard operation. Mrs. Ashworth looked directly at Jessica with obvious confusion and growing concern. My dear, you told us this estate had been in your family for generations, inherited wealth from ancestors who established the vineyard in the 1800s. These documents show something entirely different. Jessica's carefully constructed lies were crumbling in real time. But she made one final desperate attempt to maintain her deception. Those papers are forgeries. Harold has been obsessed with owning this place for years, creating fake documents to support his delusions. The family has been trying to get him professional help. The climactic moment arrived when Senator Ashworth stepped forward with the authoritative bearing of someone accustomed to evaluating evidence and testimony. Young man, if you truly own this estate, you should be able to prove it with current documentation that can be verified immediately. I smiled confidently and pulled out my phone. Of course, Senator. Let me call my attorney, Trevor Mason. He's handled all my legal business for 5 years and can confirm everything I've told you. I dialed Trevor's number on speakerphone so everyone could hear the conversation clearly. Trevor, this is Hagrid calling from the engagement party at my vineyard. I have some guests here who would like confirmation that I own this property. Could you explain my legal status for everyone? Trevor's voice came through clearly on the speakerphone. Certainly, Hagrid. You are the sole legal owner of the Johnson family vineyard, having inherited the original farm from your parents' estate and developed it into its current operation through your personal investment and labor. I've handled multiple property transactions, business incorporations, and legal matters for your vineyard operation over the past 5 years. And Trevor, what can you tell these folks about my mental competence and business capabilities? You're one of the most capable business owners I represent, Trevor replied without hesitation. Your agricultural operation is highly successful, your financial management is excellent, and you've never shown any signs of mental incapacity or confusion about your business affairs. In fact, you've been invited to speak at several industry conferences about innovative vineyard management. The revelation was complete and undeniable. Jessica's elaborate fraud had been exposed with documented proof witness testimony from my attorney and evidence that could be verified immediately through official channels. The guests stood in stunned silence, realizing they had been participants in an elaborate deception. Senator Ashworth's face showed the horror of a politician who suddenly realized he had been manipulated into a potentially criminal situation. Mr. Johnson, please accept my sincere apologies. We were completely misled about the circumstances here tonight. If my family has been involved unknowingly in any deception, I want to make it right immediately. Bradley looked at Jessica with a mixture of confusion and betrayal, finally understanding that everything about their relationship had been built on lies. Jessica, what the hell is going on? You told me your family owned this estate, that you were inheriting wine industry wealth. Who are you really? The complete exposure of Jessica's deception triggered a cascade of consequences that unfolded rapidly throughout the remaining evening. I called Trevor back and asked him to contact the sheriff's department with information about the criminal fraud I had discovered, including Jessica's forged documents and conspiracy to commit identity theft and property fraud. Within 30 minutes, 2 sheriff's deputies arrived at the Vineyard estate to investigate the reported crimes. Deputy Sarah Campbell and Deputy Mark Rodriguez were professional and thorough as they examined the evidence I had gathered, including the forged quitclaim deed fake medical records and edited audio recordings found in Jessica's purse. Ma'am, you're under arrest for document forgery, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Deputy Campbell informed Jessica while reading her Miranda rights. The elegant engagement party atmosphere transformed instantly into a crime scene investigation as other guests watched in shocked silence. Jessica's attempts to maintain her innocence crumbled when confronted with overwhelming evidence. You don't understand, she pleaded desperately. Hagrid is my brother, but he's not capable of managing all this wealth. I was trying to protect the family assets from his poor decisions. According to these legal documents, Deputy Rodriguez replied, you were planning to have your brother declared mentally incompetent through forged medical records and false testimony. That's a felony conspiracy charge that carries significant prison time. Trevor arrived shortly after the deputies, bringing additional legal documentation that proved my competence and ownership beyond any possible doubt. He also brought disturbing news about Jessica's co-conspirator, the corrupt psychiatrist Dr. Harrison Pierce. Dr. Pierce was arrested this afternoon in the state capitol on charges related to multiple disability fraud cases, Trevor explained. When confronted with evidence of his illegal activities, he provided prosecutors with detailed information about clients who hired him to create fake medical records. Jessica's name appears prominently in his confession. The legal net was closing rapidly around Jessica's entire conspiracy. Marcus Wellington, the attorney who had prepared the fraudulent guardianship documents, was contacted by investigators and immediately claimed he had been deceived by Jessica about the facts of the case. He provided his files to prosecutors hoping to avoid professional sanctions for his role in the attempted fraud. But the most devastating consequence for Jessica was the complete dissolution of her engagement to Bradley. Senator Ashworth pulled his son aside for a private conversation near the mansion entrance, their hushed discussion clearly covering the political and social implications of association with criminal fraud. Son, this woman has made our entire family look like fools, Senator Ashworth said in a voice loud enough for nearby guests to hear. She's a criminal who tried to steal her brother's property while lying to us about everything. The engagement is over immediately, and we're leaving this party right now. Bradley removed Jessica's engagement ring without ceremony, handing her the expensive diamond, while shaking his head in disgust. I don't even know who you are, he said with genuine hurt in his voice. Everything you told me about your family, your background, your values, was completely false. How could you lie about something this fundamental? Bradley, please listen to me, Jessica begged, as the deputies prepared to escort her to their patrol car. I love you, and everything I did was for us, for our future together. I wanted to give you the kind of life your family deserves. You wanted to give me stolen property, Bradley replied coldly. You were planning to have your own brother committed to a mental institution so you could steal his life's work. That's not love, Jessica. That's sociopathy. The assembled guests began departing rapidly, unwilling to remain at a party that had devolved into criminal arrests and family destruction. Many expressed their apologies to me, personally embarrassed by their earlier treatment of me as hired help and impressed by the revelation of my actual achievements. Mrs. Patricia Ashworth approached me with genuine remorse and respect. Mr. Johnson, I owe you a profound apology for my behavior this evening. Your sister's deception was so convincing that I never questioned the story we were told. You've built something remarkable here, and I'm sorry we didn't recognize your achievements properly. Thank you, Mrs. Ashworth, I replied graciously. You had no way of knowing the truth based on the information you were given. I don't hold anyone responsible except Jessica for the lies that were told tonight. Senator Ashworth also offered his personal apologies, along with a surprising opportunity that emerged from the evening's revelations. Mr. Johnson, I've been working on agricultural legislation that could benefit wine producers throughout our region. Given your expertise and obvious business acumen, would you be interested in serving as an advisor on some upcoming policy initiatives? The irony was remarkable. Senator Ashworth had spent the evening offering me employment as a groundskeeper at his estate, only to discover that I was a successful business owner whose expertise could benefit his political career. The role reversal was complete and satisfying. I'd be honored to help with agricultural policy, Senator, I replied. The wine industry faces several regulatory challenges that could be addressed through thoughtful legislation. As Jessica was placed in the back of the patrol car, she made one final attempt to gain sympathy from the remaining guests. I'm pregnant, she announced desperately. Bradley, we're going to have a baby. Please don't abandon your child because you're angry with me. But even this last manipulation failed when Bradley immediately denied the possibility. We haven't been intimate, Jessica. That's another lie, just like everything else you've told me and my family. Trevor confirmed that Jessica's pregnancy claim was part of a broader pattern of deception designed to prevent Bradley from ending their relationship. She's been planning this fraud for months, he explained to the assembled witnesses. Every aspect of her behavior has been calculated to manipulate people and steal property that doesn't belong to her. The evening concluded with the complete vindication of my integrity and the total exposure of Jessica's criminal conspiracy. Deputies transported her to the county jail where she would await arraignment on multiple felony charges that could result in several years in prison. As the last guest departed my estate, I stood on the terrace surrounded by the vineyards I had built through 10 years of sacrifice and determination. The night air carried the sweet scent of ripening grapes, a reminder of the honest work that had created genuine prosperity rather than the stolen wealth Jessica had tried to claim. 6 months later, I stood in the same spot on my terrace, but the circumstances surrounding me had transformed completely. The legal proceedings against Jessica had concluded with her pleading guilty to multiple felony charges in exchange for a reduced sentence of 3 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation and full restitution for the damages caused by her fraud. The court had ordered Jessica to pay $43,000 to cover the cost of my legal defense, the value of the wine consumed at her fraudulent engagement party, and damages to my business reputation. She was also required to complete psychological counseling to address the underlying issues that had led to her criminal behavior. During the sentencing hearing, Jessica finally acknowledged the full scope of her betrayal and expressed genuine remorse for the harm she had caused. "I was jealous of my brother's success and ashamed of my own failures," she admitted to the judge. "Instead of working to improve my own life, I decided to steal his achievements and destroy the person who had sacrificed everything to raise me and give me opportunities." The most significant change was that Jessica had begun serving her sentence at a minimum security facility, where she was learning practical job skills and receiving therapy to address her issues with entitlement and manipulation. Her counselor reported progress in helping Jessica understand how her actions had betrayed the brother who had devoted his life to her welfare. Jessica wrote me letters from prison, attempting to rebuild our relationship through honest communication and genuine accountability for her crimes. Her early letters were filled with excuses and attempts to minimize her responsibility. But gradually, she began expressing authentic remorse and understanding of the damage she had caused. "I realize now that you gave up your youth to raise me after our parents died," Jessica wrote in her most recent letter. "While other men your age were enjoying college and starting their careers, you worked multiple jobs and sacrificed your social life to make sure I had everything I needed. Instead of being grateful for your love and support, I became resentful that you succeeded where I was struggling." The healing process was slow and difficult, complicated by the depth of Jessica's betrayal and the years of planning that had gone into her attempt to steal my life's work. But I was cautiously optimistic about the possibility of eventually rebuilding some form of relationship with her, provided she continued demonstrating genuine change and accountability. Bradley Ashworth had contacted me several times since that devastating evening, expressing his continued embarrassment about his family's role in Jessica's deception and his personal regret about their failed relationship. He had broken up with Jessica immediately after learning the truth, but he struggled with feelings of guilt about not recognizing her manipulative behavior earlier. "I should have questioned her stories about inherited wealth," Bradley admitted during one of our conversations. "My family has been around money and business long enough that I should have noticed inconsistencies in her claims about generations of winemaking tradition. I wanted to believe I had found someone special, so I ignored obvious warning signs." Bradley had since begun dating someone with a completely different approach to relationships, a local teacher named Amanda, who valued honesty and authenticity over social status and family wealth. Their relationship was built on genuine compatibility rather than financial considerations, and Bradley seemed much happier with someone who appreciated him for his character rather than his family connections. Senator Ashworth had followed through on his offer to include me in agricultural policy discussions, leading to my appointment as an advisor to the State Committee on Wine Industry Development. The position allowed me to advocate for small vineyard operations and family-owned agricultural businesses, turning my personal experience with building a successful operation into broader support for other entrepreneurs. The most rewarding aspect of the advisory role was helping other young farmers navigate the challenges I had faced during my early years of vineyard development. I spoke at agricultural conferences about transforming failing farms into profitable operations, sharing practical advice about soil management, business planning, and marketing strategies. Success in agriculture requires patience, persistence, and willingness to learn from failure, I would tell audiences of aspiring vintners. There are no shortcuts to building a sustainable operation, but the satisfaction of creating something valuable through honest work makes every sacrifice worthwhile. My vineyard operation had expanded significantly since the dramatic evening of Jessica's arrest. The publicity surrounding the legal case had actually increased interest in our wines, with customers eager to support a business built through authentic achievement rather than inherited privilege. Sales increased by 30% over the 6 months following Jessica's conviction. I hired additional staff to manage the growing operation, including Maria Rodriguez, the server, who had been instructed to pretend she didn't know me during Jessica's fraudulent engagement party. Maria became my assistant manager, helping coordinate wine tastings and special events while maintaining the high standards that had earned our vineyard its reputation for excellence. The most meaningful development was establishing a scholarship program in my parents' memory, providing financial assistance to young people who had lost parents and needed support to pursue agricultural education. The scholarship recipients worked part-time at the vineyard while attending college, learning practical business skills alongside their academic studies. Robert and Margaret Johnson believed that hard work and education could overcome any obstacle. I explained to the first group of scholarship recipients. They would be proud to know that their legacy is helping other young people achieve their dreams despite difficult circumstances. The life lesson that emerged most clearly from this experience was understanding the difference between genuine success and stolen achievement. Jessica had tried to claim credit for wealth she hadn't earned, respect she hadn't deserved, and social status built on lies rather than authentic accomplishment. True prosperity comes from investing time, effort, and integrity into building something valuable that benefits others as well as ourselves. The vineyard provided employment for local residents, contributed to the regional economy, and created products that brought pleasure to customers throughout the region. Jessica's attempt to steal my achievements had ultimately strengthened my appreciation for the honest work that had created them. Every vine I had planted, every improvement I had made to the property, and every award the vineyard had earned represented genuine accomplishment that couldn't be taken away through fraud or manipulation. The greatest satisfaction came from maintaining relationships with people who valued authenticity over appearances. The friends and business associates who had supported me during the legal proceedings were people who appreciated character and integrity rather than wealth or social connections. Trevor Mason had become not just my attorney, but a genuine friend who shared my interest in supporting other entrepreneurs facing legal challenges. Together, we established a legal aid program, providing affordable representation to small business owners dealing with contract disputes and regulatory issues. As I concluded this reflection on the most challenging period of my life, I realized that Jessica's betrayal had ultimately strengthened rather than destroyed the foundation I had built. The vineyard was more successful than ever. My relationships were based on mutual respect and honesty, and my commitment to helping others had grown stronger through surviving my own crisis. The greatest wealth isn't money or property, but relationships built on truth, respect, and genuine love. When we honor each other's sacrifices and achievements, families become unbreakable foundations for success. When we choose manipulation and deception, we destroy everything valuable in pursuit of things that can never bring lasting happiness. Standing on my terrace 6 months after that devastating evening, I felt profound gratitude for the painful lessons that had taught me to protect what truly mattered while remaining open to authentic connections with people who shared my values. The vineyard would continue growing and prospering, but its greatest value was the reminder that honest work and genuine relationships create the only wealth worth having. I hope this story resonates with anyone who has experienced betrayal from someone they trusted and loved. Have you ever had to choose between protecting yourself and maintaining loyalty to family members who didn't respect your sacrifices? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story touched your heart or taught you something valuable, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories about overcoming betrayal and building authentic success. Share this story with friends who might benefit from understanding how genuine achievement differs from stolen recognition. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you all the strength to recognize your own worth and protect the achievements you've earned through honest effort.